The 14th United Nations Congress on Crime Prevention and Criminal Justice, the Kyoto Congress, is taking place. Half a century has passed since the 4th Congress was held in Kyoto in 1970. In the meantime, Japan has continued its efforts to create a safe and secure society. So let's look back in time to see how our criminal justice system developed, along with the development of our society. In 1970, as society and the economy became more stable, Osaka hosted the first World Expo in Asia. In the same year, the 4th UN Congress was held in Kyoto. Its main theme was crime and development. Along with the Tokyo Olympics in 1964, these events raised Japan's profile as one of the world's developed countries. As new political and social systems developed after the war, social and ideological conflict arose among the people in Japan. Influenced by the Cold War, a series of serious and brutal crimes, riots, and hijacking were committed by extremists and radicalized people. In response to such situations, Japan has taken legislative measures. In the 1980s, Japan became one of the leading economies in the world, for example, by ranking first in the world for the number of cars produced. In the latter half of the 1980s, stocks and land prices soared beyond the pace of economic growth, resulting in the so-called bubble economy. The development of science and technology changed people's lifestyles and living environment. Under such circumstances, new types of crimes emerged as the new social problem. In 1981, an online banking system was exploited in a large-scale wire fraud. Corruption involving members of the Diet, known as the Nenshi-koren Scandal and the Recruit Scandal, occurred. In response to such incidents, Japan has taken legislative measures. On January 7, 1989, upon the demise of His late Majesty, the new era Heisei was announced.
Let's take a look at the crime situation of the Showa era. The number of penal code offenses temporarily increased during the post-war turmoil. But after this short period, the numbers either decreased or remained stable for many years, and then started to rise from 1975. Meanwhile, the clearance rate remained consistently high throughout the years. The 1989 edition of the White Paper on Crime described Japan as one of the safest countries in the world.
In the 1990s, stock prices plunged, leading to the collapse of the bubble economy. Numerous banks went bankrupt, and illegal compensation by major securities firms became a social problem. In 1995, the Tokyo subway sarin gas attack occurred in the capital of Japan. This was one of the many heinous crimes committed by the cult Aum Shinrikyo. In the 1990s, there was a call for measures against such heinous crimes, as well as drugs and firearms trafficking committed by criminal organizations, resulting in legislation for wiretapping operations and other measures. On September 11, 2001, terrorist attacks on the United States occurred. Turning to the situation in Japan during the 2000s, economic disparity became a social issue, and public safety was challenged in various ways, including by the increase of illegal foreign residents. Against this background, the number of reported penal code offenses continued to rise dramatically from 1996. It exceeded 2.8 million cases in 2002, setting the record for the post-war era. During the 2000s, the government, the public and private sector, and local communities joined forces to promote various crime prevention initiatives in response to such a situation. And in the field of criminal justice, a number of major reforms were implemented. In 2003, a ministerial meeting concerning measures against crime was convened. For the first time after the war, effective crime prevention measures were explored in government-wide discussion. In the field of corrections, acting on the recommendations of the 2003 Correctional Administration Reform Council, the prison law was fully revised in 2007 for the first time in about 100 years. In the field of community-based treatment, based on the recommendations of the Offender Rehabilitation Expert Council in 2006, the Offender Rehabilitation Act was enacted in 2008. Various measures have also been taken to prevent reoffending. In 2016, the Act for the Prevention of Recidivism was enacted and enforced. The whole government, in cooperation with the local governments and the private sector, are actively promoting relevant policies. There was also major progress in terms of justice system reform. Guided by principles such as establishing popular bases through public participation in the judicial system, a total of 24 new legislations were enacted. Reform started to progress significantly. To promote public participation, the lay judge system, known as the Saiban-in system, began in 2009. In 2016, to meet the needs of the times, the Code of Criminal Procedure was revised. Audiovisual recording of investigative questionings and the prosecutorial agreement system were both introduced. To enhance protection of crime victims, the Basic Act on the Crime Victims was enacted in 2004. A variety of measures were implemented, achieving major improvements for the victims of crime.
During the 30 years of the Heisei era, the Japanese government, the public and private sectors, and the communities all collaborated to advance crime prevention measures, and various reforms took place in the field of criminal justice. Such initiatives, together with other contributing factors, led to a significant decrease in the number of penal code offenses that reached a post-war peak in 2002. The numbers decreased each year and reached a post-war low in 2018.
In March 2021, the Crime Congress is taking place in Kyoto, half a century since the Fourth Congress. The main theme is advancing crime prevention, criminal justice, and the rule of law towards the achievement of the 2030 Agenda. the Olympic and Paralympic Games are taking place in Tokyo, and in 2025, the World Expo is being held in Osaka. Advanced computer technology and other innovation will make our life more convenient and bring the world much closer. On the other hand, it will facilitate new forms of crime and give rise to challenges which will require global responses. Japan will spare no effort to achieve a safe and secure society.
1970年に開催された前回の京都コングレスから約50年にわたる日本の刑事司法の歩みを振り返ってまいりました。日本の刑事司法は社会経済情勢に応じて発展を遂げてきました。視点を現在に移すと、今私たちは新型コロナウイルス感染症による未曾有の危機に直面しています。世界中で弱い立場にある人々の命と生活が脅かされています。しかし私たちはその事実に目を向けているでしょうか。自分や自国のことばかりにとらわれていないでしょうか。このような時だからこそ SDGs に掲げられた誰一人取り残さない社会を実現するために、私たちはしっかりと歩みを進めていかなければなりません。京都コングレスでは世界の刑事司法のリーダーたちが2030年に向け SDGs の掲げる法の支配が浸透し、誰一人取り残さない社会を実現するための刑事司法の役割を話し合います。その実現は一国では成し遂げられない困難な課題です。各国が互いに知恵を出し合い、学び合い、協力して取り組みを進めていかなければなりません。日本はホスト国として議論を牽引していきます。議論の中で日本の取り組みが一つの参考となれば幸いですし、私たちも他国の取り組みから学んでいきたいと思います。